up to this point in time, everything that I've shown you in terms of bond valuation or bond pricing is something you could do with just a financial calculator. Really with any calculator, as long as you can raise time to something more than just squaring it, for instance. And this is how I teach bond pricing and bond valuation in all my classes initially. But now I'm going to diverge. And so for graduate students, this next clip is for you. Now we're going to work under the assumption that everybody's got a financial calculator, because I do require that in my graduate courses, not for the undergrad. And so at this point in time, I'm going to show you how do you use that fancy calculator you paid all of $30 for. Actually, I don't know what the Texas Instruments VA2 Plus runs now. It was a little less than 30 last time I checked. But anyways, we're going to put that good calculator to some great use. And you're going to see how nice it is solving bond problems. Now again, the advantage of your calculator is that it's very fast. It is not smart. You have to provide the smarts. So let's take a look at how we do bond valuation with our calculators. Let's say that I am looking at the last bond that we just looked at. So on that bond, you got a $30 payment every 6 months. It was a 6% coupon bond. The last part of this, I asked you to value that bond after 10 years, meaning there were 10 years left. But since it's a semi-annual bond, the number of payments is 20. The bond's face value never changes, so that's always really nice to do in these calculators because it's always $1,000. And I mentioned that interest rates had gone up by then, by 10 years after issue, to 6.5. So now, how do we do that on our financial calculator? Well, the way that you would get to the same value you just calculated long form using your formulas, but instead using your calculator, is as follows. First of all, I'm going to hit, doesn't really matter what order, I have to fill in 4 of the 5 keys on the time value of money line, which is the third line down here on my VA2 Plus. So for future value, I'm going to enter $1,000. For number of payments, I'm going to enter 20 because I've got 10 years semi-annual, so it's 20 time periods that are involved. In every one of those time periods, I'm getting a coupon payment. So I'm going to hit 20 and then my N. I'm going to hit $30 and hit payment. That does not change. This bond is a 6% bond, which means it's paying $60 a year or $30 every 6 months. And that will be through the entire 40 payment or 20-year sequence of this bond. That will not change. So I am going to enter time, being 20 periods left, 10 years times 2, 1,000 for my future value. I'm entering $30 and hitting the payment key. Now here's where it gets a little tricky. Whenever you're using semi-annual bonds, remember that bond rates are quoted annually, but our calculator doesn't know that. There is a way to actually set your calculator to do 2 payments a year. The problem is that then if you go to value an annual bond and you didn't change it back, your next answer will be wrong. So most of the time I never change mine and I just work with it always as though it were an annual, and I make the adjustments on time and rates. If I'm working with semi-annual, I cut all rates in half, I double all time periods, and that makes the necessary adjustment. That's why for time here I didn't put 10 for 10 years, I put 20 for 20 payments. So when rates have gone up to 6.5% per year, what I'm going to enter here on my I/Y, or interest per year key, is 3.25. So I take the current rate of interest on an annual basis, or the yield to maturity, which is 6.5, and I divide that in 2, 3.25. So I'm going to hit 3.25, hit the I/Y key. At this point, I filled in 4 of the 5 values. Now I hit compute and PV for present value. And you should get the same answer if you entered everything correctly on your calculator. Go ahead and give it a try. All right, the nice thing with the calculator, as I said, is that it's fast, but it's not necessarily smart. This especially comes in handy when what I'm asking you to solve isn't what the bond price is today, but rather what the bond is yielding. And this is more common in real life for a couple reasons. One is it relates to a chapter we have coming up later called Cost of Capital, but I'm not going to elaborate on that one at the moment. But it's more realistic because if you were to look up bond prices, now most of the pages, and I'm going to post some actual pages for you with bond pricing, you'll see that they give you the yield. But if they didn't give you the yield and you were trying to figure out if it was a good value or not, especially compared to some other investments that you might be making with your money, you'd need to be able to calculate what it's yielding at a particular price. And it's more common to see the price, this bond's selling for $870, this bond's selling for $920, this bond's selling for $1,050. It's more common to see the price quote and then to have to figure out the yield than anything else. You know, usually you're not asked to name your own price or fix your own price or find your own price. The price is there. You have to figure out if it's a good deal in terms of what it's yielding. Now, can you do these without having a financial calculator? You can. They're just cumbersome. So let me give you an example. This is just like, well, there's a couple of different applications in finance that are very similar to this in terms of pricing. But let's take a look. Let me show you one of these with some formulas on the board.